Hey everybody, I'm Jay Scherr with Jay Scherr Business Consulting. We help entrepreneurs, business owners, and other leaders maximize their potential, build rock-solid foundations for their businesses, and create more freedom in their lives. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Viktor Frankl said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." Well, on today's episode, we're going to talk about the experience of hitting bottom and choosing one's own way, uncovering the masterpiece within, pure versus peak performance, getting unlocked, and more. My guest's personal story is a testament to the power of the human spirit to overcome adversity. As he says, no struggle, no swag. He's a mindfulness and performance expert, a globally recognized speaker, author, teacher, and coach. Known as the Performance Whisperer, his work integrates principles of positive psychology, mindfulness, philosophy, neuroscience, and more. He's worked with elite athletes including Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, and countless other NBA players, Olympians, executives, and artists. Michael Jordan credits him with transforming his on-court leadership, helping Jordan lead the Bulls to 6 NBA championships. He's been featured in popular media outlets including ABC News, Huffington Post, Boston Globe Magazine, Psychology Today, and many others. Please welcome the man who's helping us get unlocked, embrace our greatness, find the flow, and discover success, George Mumford. George, it is so great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome, Jay. It's great to be here. And I just want to add that we help each other get unlocked. You know, it's something we can do on our own to some degree, but we are who we are based on our network of conversations and relationships, and other people matter.
I thank you for saying that. And I know we're going to be talking about other people and relationships and some of those relationships that have helped you and helped all of us throughout different periods of our life. So I thank you for that. So let's jump right in. I thought maybe an interesting starting point for us would be for you to share with all of us what your favorite thing is about yourself and why.
My favorite thing about myself is that I have a masterpiece. I have this divine spark, this access to Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, divine spark, Kuan Yin, whatever you want to call it. That there's a power within me that's greater than anything that is before me. Anything that I'm confronted with, there's a power great me, is the power behind me is greater, and to me, it's like all I do is, well, I'll use a quote. Maybe this may be helpful. I discovered this gentleman. His name, he passed away, but his name is Eric Butterworth, and he wrote a book. He talked about embracing the power within, and he said that God can only do for me what He can do through me. And so I think that's what it's about. It's like I have this ability, like we all have this ability to access this tremendous potential that is probably beyond all human research, and that we can access it. But the challenging thing about it is we have it, only we can access it. And to the degree that we access it, that will be expressed in the quality of our life. So if you want to live more fully, more creatively, then it's important to embrace our greatness, to find the flow, discover success. That's what I talk about when I talk about unlocking. And that's the greatest asset, is the potential. Now, how I access it, whether I take responsibility for it, that's another question. But the fact is, it's there. It's latent. It's there, and it's usually through adversity that we have access to it. And this gentleman, his name was Hans Selye. He wrote the book The Stress of Life, and it was his belief that that when we get confronted with adversity, that's when the opportunity for our latent abilities to express themselves.
So, with that said, I would love it if we could wind the clock back because just in doing my own research on you and reading your most recent book and listening to your talks and podcasts and such, it's amazing. It seems like you have lived multiple lives in one life throughout your own hero's journey. So to give context to our listeners and kind of tying to that theme of adversity and then being able to reach our potential,
Right.
share with us a bit about your backstory. Let's start there, and then we'll pull the timeline forward a bit.
Yes. So I attended the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and I was an aspiring student athlete. I wanted to play basketball, but I wasn't on a basketball scholarship, so I would have been what you call a walk-on. And it was my sophomore year, and I was rooming with Julius Irving, who's known as Dr. J. We call him Doc. And I was going out for the basketball team, and we were having what they call, in some circles, they call it OTA, or organized team activity. So even though I wasn't on the team, we would play pickup. We would play together. And in one of those pickup sequences, I got injured. I went up and my legs get cut underneath me, and I really injured my ankle. And that was pretty much my career. That was pretty much my basketball career. And so I had to go through that adversity of me being very quiet and shy, even though people don't believe that now because I'm able to speak in public and whatnot. But back then I was really shy, and I let my basketball game talk for me. But I imagine a lot of young folks, especially young men, are more into doing than talking or whatever. So when I wasn't able to play basketball anymore, or I wasn't identified as a basketball player, I didn't know who I was. And so I struggled, and I got, and along the way I got addicted to pain meds, and then illegal drugs and alcohol. But I was fortunate. I was functional. I could still, graduate, matriculate through college and graduate, and then work in the business environment. And at some point, I got to a point of bottom. I hit rock bottom. I couldn't keep doing it, and I couldn't stop from doing it. And so I hit rock bottom. And actually what happened was I was in a hospital because I was running around because I was addicted to heroin, and I used to have to get high every day, and I'd get, drugs, dope sick or whatever. And so I was running around with 104-degree temperature, and I ended up having a strep infection. And I was in the hospital for a week. And I think that's when I kind of hit rock bottom. And a friend of mine came by who was friend of mine I used to get high with, and he was sober. He was clean, and he came and took me to an AA meeting. And then that put me on the road of recovery. And then fast forwarding to July 30th, 1984, I went into a detox. And it was very interesting process because I had been going to AA meetings for 3 months because my friend, it's almost anniversary, April 1st, 1984, he came by. It was a Sunday. It took me to an AA meeting. And so once I got the idea and I saw him, he was proof positive that it was possible for me to not die as an alcoholic or a substance abuser. And I went on the path and went into detox in July. And when I was going into the detox, I heard myself saying, do you know that the same George that goes in there, if that dude comes out, we got a problem.
Right.
So it was little things like that I think I was picking up along the way once I found that there was a process that one could be involved in to actually access, and it was about accessing my inner game or accessing my masterpiece, my higher power, whatever you want to call it. And so that started it off. And so this July 30th will mark 40 years of
Amazing.
sobriety. And so
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. And it was challenging because not only when I got out of the detox did I have to deal with, not going back into that lifestyle or getting re-addicted, or not really addicted, but feeding my addiction, I had chronic pain. And so I was probably self-medicating myself all those years because I had emotional pain, but I also had physical pain. And because I was under stress a lot, I had a lot of GI problems or stomach problems. And I know now it was just a stress reaction to living in a very stressful relationship with reality. And so when I got out of there, then I started, I was in an HMO back in those days. That was very rare. And there was this study that they were doing on stress management. And this woman, Dr. Joan Boracinko, was running this particular study. And at that time, she was one of three, what they call psychoneuroimmunologists.
Okay.
There were only three in the world, and she was one of them. And so she taught me about this idea of self-awareness, self-regulation, mindfulness, that it was lifestyle change, that I had to take responsibility for my recovery. Well, not just my recovery, but for my healthcare, for my well-being. And I was introduced to this idea that we don't have to start where there's no symptom, but I was starting where I had disability, or I had discomfort. And then as I got to central point, or to neutral point, the idea was to move towards more levels of wellness. So I got into this process, and at the same time, I became aware that I had this need to be intellectually stimulated. So over the last, I don't know, I guess it's April. So we got 3 months before, well, 4 months from March. So for over the last 39 years and 8 months, I've read over a book a week.
And are they
A
minimum? And are these books in a multitude of different subjects and topics? Or, okay.
Yes. Yeah. So the other thing I have to cop to is I'm a recovering perfectionist. So when I took the course in stress management, they had a syllabus with books on it. I read every book on that syllabus, and then I went into the back pages of the books I read and got other books. And so that's how I started. I kept reading books about pain as motivator, how to self-regulate. They didn't call it that in those days, but self-awareness and self-regulation. How can I take more responsibility for myself, and realizing that I had 4 domains of being. There was the physical. Back in those days, I just saw physical, mental, and emotional. Physical, mental, and spiritual. Then I added emotional to it. So it really relates to the body, the mind, the heart, and the soul, the spirit. Those 4 aspects of being have to be exercised and developed. And so I got into this in recovery, and 12-step recovery. They talk about the mental, the physical, mental, and spiritual. And then as I started studying the emotional, or the heart, and the social, relationships, or that sort of thing, I started kind of getting into it. And I know now that what I was doing was pursuing excellence and wisdom with grace and ease. But back then it wasn't so graceful, and it wasn't so much ease in it. It was more like a white knuckle grit, warrior mentality of just pushing through and damn the torpedoes and full speed ahead, that kind of thing. And as I started learning more and more, I started realizing this slow is smooth and smooth is fast. It's you can be quick but not in a hurry, as Coach Wooden talked about, the Hall of Fame coach from UCLA. So that I got into that. So it was a humility and a hunger that helped me to actually do things that I wouldn't do otherwise. And I went back to school and got my graduate degree and stuff like that. But I just felt like I got clean. I was able to say no and yes to life. So how did I do that? And how do I help other people do that? So I became very interested. Even though I was working as a financial analyst for 16 years, I still, on my off time, I was, volunteering, going into jails and institutions and detox and talking to people and learning how to help them develop.
So I want to talk about that, but I want to pull on 2 threads that you had mentioned that I want to explore a little more deeply if we can.
Sure.
Number 1, you mentioned about identity. So when you had this injury, you had prior to that point had identified yourself as a basketball player, as an athlete.
Right. Yes.
So this injury occurs, and now that changes the game, right?
Right.
So you go down a different path. So I want to speak to the importance of identity, because so many of us deal with that identity challenge, right? We identify ourselves with our title, with a job, with a profession, whatever that happens to be. And then if something changes, we can often have a very, very difficult time navigating life because the game has changed, the rules have changed. So can you speak to just identity in general and what happens when there is a life change? You've got a personal experience, but
Right.
how you help other people manage through that change of identity.
Yes. Thanks for sharing that, because for years I knew that this idea of self-image or self-identity was really important, because it's like a foreman that says, yes, you can do that. No, you can't do that. And so for me, uh, um, when I didn't play basketball, I didn't know who I was. So when you don't know who you are, you can end up being anybody, right? Or you just kind of go with the confirmation of, you just kind of conform. And so for me, it's interesting because even in my early recovery, I remember my meditation teacher at the time, Larry Rosenberg, he talked to me about identifying with being an alcoholic and a drug addict, or say you're saying that you're saying that you're creating that. So I started, instead of saying I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict, I would say I'm in recovery. And so the identity is really important. And it's interesting because this gentleman, Warren Bennis, who's in the leadership field, I mean, obviously he's passed away, but he said two things. He said one thing. He said, to be a leader, you have to be yourself. And the name of the book is on becoming a leader. But he also said that self-knowledge and self-invention are lifelong processes. So that means you have to keep reinventing yourself, reimagining yourself in your world. That this is really important because things are in constant flux. And what's his name? I forget his name, but he wrote a book called Thank You for Being Late. And he talks about the idea of accelerated change because of technological change, climate change, and the global economy, as these things that were in constant flux. And you go back to the Greeks, they'll tell you about things being in constant flux. So things are always changing. And so the question really becomes, are you going to ride the wave of change or get hit by it? Mm-hmm. And the people that get hit by it are ones that become extinct. So you have to be really clear about who you're being, and that starts to get into what I call the inside game or the inner game, because and I remember this, I'll say it, and it's very interesting. You are not what you think you are, but what you think you are. So we become what we think about. That's the greatest secret that Earl Nightingale talked about. But in the Bible, it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And so if you think, and Henry Ford said this, if you think you can and you can't, you're right. So the thought, we don't understand that the inner dialogue, the thoughts that we have are taking us to where we go. And so we have to really be clear about it. And I remember this two philosophers actually, Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, they, in one of their ditties, they talk about, I have my mind on money and money on my mind. That's meditation. To meditate means to contemplate. To contemplate means to look at repeatedly or closely. So we are some bad mofos. We have this masterpiece within which what we manifest what we hold in mind. We manifest us. We have this ability. Thoughts are things, and our thinking helps us play out scenarios. So we'll play out scenarios about how we think things are going to happen. So thinking is really important, even though people think when you meditate, you don't think. It's not so much not thinking, it's being aware of the thoughts without being lost in them and knowing what thoughts to focus on and what thoughts to let go of. And so if we look at, so it's this process, this inner continuous inquiry about, what is on my mind. Is my mind on this? Then that's what's on my mind. And if I'm focused on that, that's what I'm creating. That's what I'm manifesting. So we
Wow.
have to understand that, yeah, you have to. And so if you say you think of yourself as, yeah, you're capable, you can do that, or you're a great player, or you make plays, or you're a great friend or a great parent or whatever, if you think that way, thinking it is one thing. But if you think it and really consent to it being true, then because you see yourself that way, that's how you behave.
Yeah, that is so true. And this is such an important piece of our conversation because, to your point, you identified as different things, right? You identified as an athlete. You identified then as maybe a drug user, an alcoholic, right? But when we tell ourselves those stories, it, to your point, it changes our behavior. It changes our world.
Right.
It
That's
changes the
right.
people that we choose to surround ourselves with.
That's
And
right.
reframing and learning to change that language, it just goes to show the power of language and the power of the things that we tell ourselves. Now, of course, we have to attach action to those changes, right? So when we start to
Yeah. So you
reframe,
can't just, yeah. So we have to understand. So when you want to do something, you have to create a vision of possibility for yourself that you grow into that role, or you see yourself as being capable of it. But most of our experience is not as unconscious or on the down low. I'd say maybe up to 90%. There's dialogue, there's conversations going on, there's belief systems that are operating that we're not aware of, but they determine how we experience life, how we experience ourselves, how we experience things. And so we have to start to understand, how do I how do I relate? And so we talk about self-awareness. We have this ability to step back and observe ourselves. Animals can't do that. We can do that. We can observe ourselves, but how we observe ourselves is really important. So we talk about mindfulness, of being able to observe ourselves. So we have mirror mind. It's just reflecting what it is. We're not observing ourselves through self-interest or abstract thinking, or associative thinking. It's just being able to see things clear, uncritically, and non-reactively. To be able to see things. So it's like looking in a microscope. We want to see the bare data before it gets embellished with all of our opinions and thoughts and experiences from the past. So we have to have an ability to see things. And so because we have self-awareness, we can observe our thoughts, feelings, and our behaviors, even how we interpret things. And by being able to do that, we can self-regulate. We can regulate our thoughts, so our thoughts are more loving, more compassionate, more instructive, more
yeah,
more constructive. And then the feeling to understand, because when we start to be able to be mindful and just to observe experience in a certain way, we create gaps, and in that gap, you can see that when this object comes in, then there's thinking about it. Then there's perception. There's all of these things that are happening. And if we can create a space where we just see the object before we start judging it or reacting to it, is really, really important. So we have this ability to be self-aware and to self-regulate. So if I say I want to be loving, then I have to regulate my beliefs and my thoughts, my words, my actions. And this is what Gandhi says: our beliefs become our thoughts become our words become our actions become our habits become our values become our destiny. So that's an equation. So if I have on the love glasses, and I believe in love, and I believe that I'm lovable and others are lovable, then my thoughts are going to be in alignment with that. My words are going to be in alignment with that. My actions are going to be in alignment with that. So you see where I'm going with this. And so we have this ability to self-regulate. So if you don't like what you're getting, you can change it.
absolutely.
And it doesn't mean that I can say I'm going to be 6'7" and with long arms. It's not that, but it's like, okay, I can be more present. I can be, if I say I want to accomplish something, then am I willing to be who I need to be so I can do what I want to do? And that comes down to regulating. So we talk a lot. I work with a lot of elite performers, whether they're entrepreneurs or whatever. So we use sports because what I like about sports is there's a beginning, middle, and end, and it's whereas life keeps it's like a marathon, it keeps going on, but we have to create these points of analysis or observance. So we have to stop and say, okay, in between these two, this integral time, we need to evaluate it. What worked, what didn't work, that kind of stuff. And so we need to be able to understand, okay, if this is what I want to do or what I want to accomplish, then I have to, like, if I want to win a championship, I have to be a champion. So what does that mean? That means I got to act, think, and behave as if I'm already a champion. What do champions do? So we emulate people. What do they do? How do they feel? How do they deal with adversity? Well, when they see adversity, some people see it as a curse. They see it as an opportunity. They see it as a challenge. They see it as, oh, okay, I can handle this. This is going to be great. And then I raise my energy for it. Other people withdraw energy and say, I can't do it. That's a self-image saying it's too big for you. You can't do it. But if you have an image that says, well, I'm not there yet, but I can expand. I can create this vision of possibility where I grow into it, or I see myself as capable of meeting that challenge. Does that make sense? And
That
that's what
makes
stress is all about. So this is what it is. So the self-regulation, regulating our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors in ways. So if you think about it, we have the what they call a hand brain. I got this from Tandy and Deepak Chopra. They had a thing on the brain. So you have the reptilian brain is here. Then you have the emotional brain. Then you have the thinking brain. And so the idea is, how do you coordinate that? How do you learn how to integrate those parts of yourself so that you can use that brain? Because what happens a lot of times is when we don't have space between stimulus and response, the stimulus goes right to the middle brain or the amygdala. You get emotionally hijacked.
I
So
think
we
we've all
want
experienced that before.
yes, and so and that reptilian brain has a role, but we don't live in danger like in, well, you got to know if there's noise in that bush there, it could be a saber-toothed tiger or it could be a bear. Bears run 40 miles out. You have to be able to have your reptilian brain get you out of harm's way, either fight, flight, or freeze, or or whatever else. There's another component, but let's just say those three. So we have to understand how to create space. So when a stimulus happens, so if you say something to me, instead of me getting emotionally hijacking and then swearing at you and attacking you, maybe even being violent with you, I have to be able to create space so that I take in what's being said, but there's a space, there's a gap in there where I actually can get it to my prefrontal cortex, and then now I can choose based on who I say I want to be and what I want to do. And this is what Viktor Frankl said. He said, space between stimulus and response. In that space, we have the freedom and power to choose. So as human beings, like I said, we have this masterpiece within. We have this ability to reflect on experience. We have this ability to self-regulate. So we make a mistake or we get emotionally hijacked. We can always say, okay, so what's the lesson there? How do I learn the growth mindset? And then say, okay, so now I need to practice. So when that happens again, I pause and I don't react right away. And then there's an ability to really choose or respond to the situation in ways rather than reacting. But we have this capacity. Everybody has this capacity. And yes, people may have some kind of could be a character defect, or just when you're in survival mode, that middle brain locks up. You don't have access to things you need. So it's so important to be at rest, or to be at ease, or to be in the rest and digest, or be in the growth mindset, so that we can actually see things and learn from them rather than being in survival mode, scarcity mode, or in where we're just the reptilian brain. What it does is seeking where the danger is. And so 9 out of 10 thoughts are going to be negative. So think about that. So somebody could say something to you, but you're going to interpret it negatively because it's a threat. And so we have to understand what our brains and how to integrate them, and how the fact that we have free will. Sometimes we don't act like we have free will, but we have the autonomy to decide how to direct our attention, decide what to think, decide what and thinking and how we feel, how to modify that or how to control that. And then when we have these emotions, how to relate to them in ways where we can feel them and not get emotionally hijacked or get so attached to them that we're not able to see. Because some people think that we have to be like all in the mind and not in the heart. Well, if you're in the mind with no heart connection, it's going to be flat. So we have to be able to have emotions, or what he talks about, love and will. I'm trying to think of who talked about that. It might have been Rollo May. But anyway, one of the psychologists talks about that. So we have to develop the mind and the heart and the body and the spirit or the soul. We have to, all of those things have to be there and supporting each other so that we don't lose our connection to humanity. We don't lose the fact that I and the other are one. We got to get beyond this illusion of separateness. So we talk about things changing all the time and there's suffering. I don't care what you do, you're going to suffer, but can you put suffering on top of the suffering or get peace out of the suffering? Like you start off the show by saying, we have this choice to relate to unavoidable suffering in ways where we maintain our attitude, our dignity, our love, our compassion, that we can do that. So we have this ability, but like I said, we have this tremendous potential, but unless we develop it, and only we can develop it, it's an inside job, then to the degree that we develop it, that's going to be reflected in the quality of how we are living, how we are being. And so this is the hidden secret. We just went through Easter and we talk about the death and the resurrection, and you could talk about, we all have that Christ consciousness as a pattern to be able to die of the body and be reborn of the spirit, or to be born down in a way where we realize that, we got to get beyond this illusion of separateness and this illusion that we don't have the power to change things, because as human beings, we have something that angels don't have. And what is that? According to Martin Buber in The Way of Man, he says, we can make things holy. We hallow things just by an intention. Angels don't do that. We can do that. We can make something holy. We can create, we can let God in wherever, or that energy, that love in wherever we are. And it comes to us. It's an inside job, but we have access to it. And that's the challenge for us, is to say yes to life, as Viktor Frankl says in one of his latest books that his foundation put out. Say yes to life. And by saying yes to life, now you can do something with it. If you say no to it, then it's different. So anyway, I didn't mean to go off, but I just wanted to.
I thank you for that, because I love the way that you explained this, and you packed a lot in to what you just said. And, I'm thinking, first of all, I've got Say Yes to Life sitting right over here on my bookshelf, as well as Man's Search for Meaning, which, by the way, for all of you that are watching and listening right now, if you have not read Man's Search for Meaning, go out and buy it immediately and read it. It is an incredible book with so much insight in there. But I will say that, that famous saying of his, between stimulus and response, that space, that gap that you mentioned, meditation has helped me more than anything else that I have done in my life in acknowledging and trying to expand that space just enough to where I can, so I'm not pulled into a situation, right? So I'm not reacting to it. I can take just a pause, whether it's a breath, just a pause to engage a different part of my brain, so then I have the choice to respond accordingly versus allowing my emotions to get pulled. And, we think about it today in such a politically charged climate with social media and all the other things that are coming at us. It's so easy today to get pulled left and right. And if we can learn to not get pulled into situations and automatically respond to something we see, it would just make our ability to communicate and be good human beings so much better and so much easier. Easier said than done.
Yes, just listening. They say you should listen 70% and talk 30. So, and I go back to Stephen Covey and his amazing book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talked about, because he learned about Viktor Frankl when he was on one of his sabbaticals, and then that's when he started cultivating, or that's when stuff started coming together with him. And he talks about creating space between stimulus response. He talks about 4 things that he identifies. One is awareness, self-awareness, independent will, creative imagination, and conscience. So that's how he looks at it. That's how you create space between stimulus response, using that. And the whole practice of mindfulness, like right mindfulness, is this idea of slowing down the perceptual process. So you start to see things and you let things speak to you in their own language without embellishing them or without cutting it off before you get the whole message. So I'll give you an example. Like when I was growing up, and there was a particular, there was Forest Hill Station. And so I'd be coming from Eggleston Station or Dudley Station, whatever, and I'd take the train, the elevator train. We used to have them. We don't have them anymore, but elevator train. Then you run downstairs, like say if you run downstairs and then you run to get on a bus. And in those days, the buses only had the destination on the front of the bus, not on the side. They weren't colors. And so I run down and the bus is about to take off and I'm running. I look in the front of the bus and I see the letter BR, the letters B and R. Then I jump on the bus. And so I get on a bus and I end up going to Brockton and I wanted to go to Bridgewater. So what was the difference? The mindfulness creates this ability to stay there and get as much of the raw data before you override it and then just jump to action. So mindfulness is this ability to get all of the letters. And sometimes you might have to get 7 letters before you know. And there's always this sense of urgency where even though you're doing it, you got to be in a hurry. So mindfulness is this process that allows you, and then when you do it over and over, it allows you to get more information, more of the raw data before you embellish it with your self-interest, with your abstract thinking. Oh yeah, if I do this, then it's going to take me here. Or associative thinking. Yeah, I remember the last time this happened, where you're bringing noise and clutter into it, and it's not a pure perception. And when we go over it and you do things over and over, each time, maybe I'm able to hang out a little bit longer, so I get another letter. Then I go back and I keep practicing, I get a little bit longer. So we can increase that space, so we actually slow down things. We slow down our perception, and just by letting things speak to us instead of trying to interpret what it means before we get all the information is so powerful. And this is what this is what I heard you say about how it helps you get this space, because when you're meditating, when you're contemplating, you're not doing anything but just watching. It's like a Yogi Berra move. Yogi Berra said you can observe a lot just by watching, or you can see a lot just by observing. And it's that simple. But it takes something, because you have to have a certain level of faith or willingness to be vulnerable, to let the unfolding unknown moment express itself in its own language.
That is so true. So stay on mindfulness here, because the work that you do and the work that you've done with elite athletes and working with Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Shaq, etc., mindfulness played a pivotal role in that work. So for those that are watching and listening right now, you've given some great examples here, but for a top athlete, how does mindfulness help them improve their game or be able to see things differently if they're already at the top of their game? Just give an example of how mindfulness would help someone in that particular position.
Yes. So when you're doing an activity, if you're executing a skill, mindfulness by itself is not enough. Mindfulness is just like mirror mind; it just reflects what's there. But you also need insight, or what I call wisdom. In my book, The Mindful Athlete: Secrets of Pure Performance, I talk about the 5 superpowers, and they're not linear. They're linear on one level, but they're non-linear. They connect. So to be mindful, you have to have the other 4 supporting mindfulness. And one of the things that supports mindfulness is insight or wisdom. And wisdom can be looked at as information, intellect, direct experience, or intuition. And so when you say be mindful of what? So the insight is the information. What are you being mindful for? How are you being mindful when you're seeing things, or when you're doing something where you're moving too much to the left? Then the mindfulness reminds you that you have to move over to the right. But if you don't have the understanding or the wisdom or the information or the intel of what it looks like or what it is you're trying to do, then you get back on track. And so mindfulness needs wisdom. But if you have too much wisdom or too much knowledge, you become cynical unless you have faith that balances that. So mindfulness helps develop, I'll call the 5 superpowers. There's mindfulness, which is the hub. There's wisdom or insight. There's effort, right effort. There's right concentration, and there's also faith or trust. So you need faith. So there's pairs. So the faith and the wisdom or the insight have to balance each other, because if you have too much insight and not enough faith, you become cynical. If you have too much faith and not enough verified faith or verified wisdom, that the direct experience of it, then you become Pollyanna-ish. But at the same time, effort, and I say this is the one people get caught in, they try too hard. There's an efforting where you're being the hare instead of the tortoise. Slow motion gets you there quicker, and so you're too much energy. So concentration or poise needs to balance that. But if you have too much poise, then you become kind of sluggish or lethargic. You have to have that energy, the effort to come in and balance that. So anything you do, those qualities are happening, because you have to balance your effort with the poise, and you have to have faith, ability to be vulnerable, and have the insight, wisdom, and mindfulness cultivates them all, but it also helps us balance them. So unconsciously, we're balancing things. So to be mindful, to be able to run up in front of that bus and to just pause and take things in, those other 4 factors of supporting it, but in a lesser of a role. But you need them all. And so that's why I say they're nonlinear. They help each other. So if you have one there, they're all there, but to the degree to which they are expressing themselves might be more subtle. Does that make sense? And
It does.
So when we're talking about athletes, how do you do what you want to do? Well, you have to be able to make mistakes and not identify with your mistakes, but learn from your mistakes. So I'll take a very simple example, like say shooting free throws, and this is March Madness. So you see people get up there and they miss free throws or whatever. So you get up there and you miss the free throw, then they're saying, "Oh, I missed, I got to make it." Well, the focus needs to be on, okay, you took the shot, you missed it. Why did you miss it? Okay, at back rim. Okay, your elbow went out, so you got to keep it in. And I seen one shot, they shot, but they didn't stick it. They didn't do this. So it went in and came out. So if you see Michael Jordan in that last play with the Bulls, when he came back and he left his hand out there. He left his hand up there. Why? Because all of his other shots were short. So he had to go back to basic fundamental techniques and stick it and leave it up there. He wasn't profiling. He was making sure it would go down and go in. And so you start to see. So I'm interested in, okay, you got to mentally understand, what do you need to change so you make it the next time? That's what the focus is not on. So error correction. So error correction is really important, but error attribution, or what you attribute the error to, is really important. If you think, well, I'm just not good enough, not that. No, it has to be based on the basic fundamentals of, you shoot with your feet, you keep your elbow in, you stick it. There's certain principles you have to recognize and say, okay, what do I need to change? And then mentally note that. Then when you go up there, you just make the next one, and you can only shoot one shot at a time. If you go up at bat, you can't go up to bat 0 for 16 or 16 and 0. You got to go up there at 0 and 0. Just make the next play. That's, Yogi Berra, once again, he said, I ain't no slump, I just ain't hitting. So what does he mean? He means that he just got to go up and get the hit, but don't take the other at-bats up to the plate with you, because now you got a 100-pound weight on. And so it's this idea of understanding how you need to do it. So there's techniques, but we're all unique and individual. So I need to figure out how I need to correct myself, how I need to relate and do error correction. So the process of self-awareness and self-regulation is so huge. That's how you get to self-mastery. That's how you got to keep doing, keep changing what you're doing until you can do what you can do. So you can do it. So it's so simple, And it's so common sense. But I heard a guy say once common sense is not common practice.
True.
So we had this idea where we're in the head about it instead of getting back to the basic fundamentals. Your feet, where your feet, your hand, what's the basic technique? And when we do it and we program it in our minds, we know, oh, that's a good rep. Keep that one. And then you keep doing it. And then at some point it becomes automatic because you program yourself. There's a neural net here. People say muscle memory. It's not the muscle that's memory. It's the neural net, the neuroplasticity, the connections we're creating so that things are happening. So we get to the point where we're not thinking, we're on automatic pilot. It's just automatic because we program ourselves. Okay, we do this, boom. So you can do that where you can automatically be kind, automatically be focused. And believe it or not, when we get stressed or when we're in danger, we focus better.
That is true. Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense. I mean, I'm kind of going off, but there's so much to cover and there's so much to do it. But that's in a nutshell, it's like that's how you do it. But you have to have the self-awareness and to be able to keep changing. And when you get in the flow, it's because you have your challenges and skills are high, but you have immediate feedback. You have that feedback loop where you get immediate feedback. And then when you get the feedback, you're adjusting in the moment. And when you adjust in the moment, you get into a flow where it's happening without you having to think about it. It's like you catch the current and it's just carrying you away because you found the flow. You embrace your greatness and you found the flow.
I love that you talk about self-awareness really as the first step to this. And that
Right.
self-awareness piece has played a role, obviously, throughout your life as well. And because once we have the self-awareness, that's right, holding that mirror up and seeing how we're reacting to life, how we're showing up, right, our thoughts, etc. It isn't until we have that self-awareness that we can actually do something about it.
That's
so
right.
I really appreciate that.
Right.
And then you also made a comment just a moment ago that it's really simple, right? And it may be simple, but as you know, simple's not always easy.
That is absolutely right.
But the process is simple in nature, but I think too often we get stuck, we get frustrated, we tell ourselves, I can't do this, I can't do that, and it becomes a jumbled mess. So I really appreciate you explaining it the way that you did. And I'm curious, with all that you've experienced up to this point and your knowledge and experience with mindfulness and all the work there, at what age do you think now, at what age should we start learning about mindfulness, meditation, breathing, and just that level of self-awareness?
As soon as possible. So they say around 2 years old or something where the kid looks in the mirror and then they start discovering, that's me, instead of this amorphous thing. And so it's not like you're consciously teaching them that. You're modeling that as a parent, because they'll I can't tell you, when I work with clients and if I go to the home and we do things, the kids will want to be with them. Sometimes the cat or the dog will come over and lay down and just bask in that ability to just be present. So they kind of come in with this not sense of self, but it's like any age. But I think it's more about just embodying it, because most of the time, especially the young folks, and I'd say even probably up to 20, 25, even now, we're more not nonverbal. 93% of the communication is nonverbal. So you have to be the message. You have to be present, be mindful. You hear the thing where you have the parents say, I want you to be honest. Then somebody calls, tell them I'm not home. That's a mixed message. You know what I mean? Right. Whereas you have to be it. You have to be the message. And so just be present and be at ease. And then because they're emulating us anyway. And it's just talk about it, but to be it, and to talk about how important it is to be in the moment, to be able to slow down, to be able to think about, or to be embodied, be in your body, and just being okay with being who you are and not having to be like somebody else, but just really just being present. And so when they asked the Buddha, when he got enlightened, they said, are you a god? Are you a mendicant? Or you are this or that? He said, no, I'm awake. And that's it. It's like there's a pure consciousness. It's this idea of there's an observing presence. And sometimes we refer to it as a witness, but I would say we're witnessing. There's no witness there.
So good. So, as we are getting close to wrapping up our conversation, I would love it if you would give all of us a challenge. What is one thing that you would challenge all of us to do, including me? Something that you would challenge us to think about doing?
It's interesting. So I don't know why it's coming up, but I did several podcasts, and in two podcasts, I realized they asked me what were the three things that I know for sure, or three things that I believe in, and I answered saying, the only time we have is now. The only one you could be is yourself, and all you need is love. And so now is the only time you have. So I say joy now or never. And I stole that from Krishnamurti. He said peace now or never. So I just put joy in there. And it's not like you're going for the joy. It's like enjoying a moment. Be fully deployed and fully engaged, fully self-expressed in the moment. Do what you're doing. And then they say burn yourself completely in the activity. So you're just doing it for, as Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi says, he calls it the autotelic personality. You do the thing for the thing in and of itself, for no reason. Just fully engaged, fully deployed in this moment, no matter what you're doing. You just give your whole body, heart, mind, and soul to it. You burn yourself completely in the activity. That's the thing. Can you be present and just be fully expressed and fully engaged?
Well, you heard it, my friends, right from George Mumford. If you can do that, that's a great challenge to get started. I know that I'm going to focus more on that myself and make that certainly a goal that I'm
But
working
even if you just
toward.
take one of those, just take one of those and just focus on that. Just like I said, we just finished Easter, and so when I study the teachings of Jesus or the Christ consciousness, he taught two things really: love everything and continual forgiveness.
What a great way
And
to
so if
live.
we can do that, if we can just be in love with what we're doing, because when we love something, we make it grow. We labor for it. We labor for what we love. We love what we labor for. So this idea of love and labor, this idea of being your authentic self, going inside and listening, let your heart tell you. If you listen, there's a still small voice that's there, but it's easily drowned out. We need to be able to let that voice get louder so we can, and then it gets louder when we listen to it and we attend to it and we stay in that peace, that be still and know. I mean, um, all this advice that you see in the Bible or in the Quran or in the Buddhist literature or the wisdom literature, as Stephen Covey calls it, they're saying the same thing. They're pretty much saying the same thing. Be here now, and to thine own self be true. Know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So you got to say yes to whatever it is. It's all there, but as you said, it's not easy. But we can develop the habits that will allow us to do it, so it becomes a way of being. We don't have to think about it. We just do it. So you train to be mindful, and they call it fabricated mindfulness in the Tibetan tradition. But it becomes unfabricated mindfulness when it becomes a habit where you just do it because you've trained yourself like I said, becomes your habits, your values, your destiny as an equation. And so we have it there, but are you willing to work for it? And to the degree that you work for it, and one of the things I want to talk about with the self-awareness is without self-responsibility, without the assumption of self-responsibility, and without the idea that we make choices, even when we don't make choices, we make choices.
True.
So why not choose life? Say yes to life. Choose love. Choose being on purpose, choose being present, choose being yourself, choose love.
Well, you definitely have, and we can too, and do it now, right? There is no, this
Now is
is
the
the
time.
only, this is the
Now is
time,
the
this is
time.
the only moment we
Now is
actually
the time.
have. So take
Yes.
advantage of it. So, George, what could you share with us maybe one or two bigger questions that you're asking yourself today that you're contemplating on?
Yes. And it's interesting because I have this Mindful Athlete online course, and we just started Tuesday, 2 days ago. And when the woman on the call was talking about what's happening in Gaza right now, and all of the suffering and all that, how do we make sense with these especially in the name of religion, these hostilities that go back millennia, and how feeling powerless, feeling like we can't do anything about it. And Thich Nhat Hanh talked about it a lot, about this idea of being peace, of making peace in your own house, in your own place, and then talking about that and seeing, call them by their true names. I use that quote and Unlocked. And what he was really talking about, he used a poem about in Vietnam, the river pirates that were, just not only stealing from people, but they were raping young. And he talks about this young girl that got raped and then threw herself over and died. And we have this ability, we have this potential of always, attacking the perpetrator and not realizing that they're both victims and they've both been programmed a certain way. And then call them by two names. How can we create space for both and say, yeah, we don't like that, but demonizing one and not realizing that we have to change ourselves. We have to let it begin with me. And if we can change our thoughts and have our thoughts be more loving, compassionate, and then send blessings to everyone, to them, like I said, to continuous forgiveness. That's why Jesus said, love everyone, love everything. It's not about deserving, it's unconditional.
It's that is so true. If we could all do that, right? It's like a rising
And it's
tide
a
lifting
lot.
all
It's
boats.
people don't realize it doesn't feel like enough, but believe me, it's enough. If you become a beacon, like to I don't be a light unto yourself and others. If you can bring your love light or your love to wherever you go, there's a transformation that's going to happen. Like Jimi Hendrix said, when the power of love is greater than the love of power, we will know peace. That's the thing. That's what we have to do. The message of love. He talked a lot about that. All you need is love. The Beatles. There's a lot of songs that talk about this, but how to do it and how to do it in a way. That's where right effort comes in, where it's slow as smooth as fast. You keep doing it until you can do it. But initially, you go through the learning curve and you feel like you can't do it, but you keep doing it until you can do it. You don't stop. You don't quit. You don't give up. And this is when Winston Churchill said success is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. So if you fall down 8 times, the eighth time after you fall down, you get up with more enthusiasm than you had the first time. That's
Love
the
it.
challenge.
That is the challenge. This is so good. So, George, I have all of your social handles, links to purchase your two books, and to be able to access your course as well. Obviously, we're going to put all that in the show notes. And so, in my final question to you is this: what is one of the most valuable, unexpected lessons that you have learned from a client of yours? An unexpected, valuable lesson.
Yes, that I have to create a possibility for them to live into. So I have to see their masterpiece instead of looking at their dysfunction or looking at where they are, looking at them as where they could be, where they should, at their best, seeing their best, creating that, holding that space for them to live into.
Beautiful. Very good. George, I want to thank you so very much for joining us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. What an incredible conversation. I'm so grateful that we've been able to create the space to have this and for you to share of your wisdom, of your knowledge, and of your energy. So thank you for being here.
Yeah. So is it okay if I thank you?
You
Because
certainly may.
the quality of the conversation, there's a role you play in that, and the role you play in that is twofold: the questions and the listening. You create a listening that allows the conversation to be as it is. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. You make my heart sing. And for all of you, thank you so very much for watching and listening. I know that this has been a great conversation and that you've gotten huge value out of this. I just know it. I do have a quick favor to ask. Would you please take just a moment to subscribe, rate, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Let us know what you thought about this particular episode. Maybe share one piece of knowledge that you gained from George that you're going to apply in your life. That would be outstanding. That helps our podcast grow and continue to attract incredible guests just like George. And to enjoy more episodes, all you need to do is visit jscherbusinessconsulting.com, click that podcast button, and until next time, keep learning, keep growing. Make sure you pick up a copy of Unlocked, and we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.